When you open it to a new wireless Workbench coordination, this is what you get. You got nothing here in your inventory, nothing here in your frequency coordination, and nothing here in your monitor. I'm not going to focus too much on this tab right now because I don't have any equipment, but we will focus on both your inventory and frequency coordination. So I am going to start off by doing kind of a demo show with all Shure gear, kind of what a typical show might look like for your mid to large size bands playing shows. I will specify I am in the United States, so this will be tailored to this. Obviously, each country has their own laws about what part of the spectrum is to be allowed to be used, so a lot of this will be geared towards the United States. However, it should still be very valuable for people in other countries. I saw a question about custom profiles. I can touch on that as well towards the end. Maybe remind me of that when we get further into this. So, up here in the left, and I'm going to start moving some of this and zooming in on things. I have this add new device right here. So, we're going to go and add a device. I'm going to preface this by saying if you are on a network and you have things networked, you will be able to see what is on your network. Currently, my network is off. We're going to do this all manually for the sake of learning. And let's do this all with Shure products to start. So Shure is the top, and then everything else is alphabetical. So common shows nowadays, let's say we're using a handful of Axient. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to grab an AD4Q, which is an Axient quad A, and we're going to go into the G57 Plus band. So all the different bands that are available will be here. Let's do that. And let's say we add 3 devices. Say we got 12 channels of wireless mics. Couple other things is whether you're in quadversity or what you're transmitting a standard or HD. We're just going to keep this as the default to make it easy. We're going to add these to our inventory. So now I have all of these 12 channels, so 3 quads in my inventory. I'm going to also add some in-ear transmitters. So let's come here. For the sake of this, I'm not going to do the new PSM. I'm going to do PSM 1000s because those are a little bit more difficult to coordinate, since they're not wideband digital. So let's do PSM 1000s in the G10 bands. In the United States, those are the most common currently. Obviously, though, you have all these different bands, so you will choose the band that you are using in your country or that you have with you on the road. A lot of these are no longer legal in the United States. We're going to choose G10. And then let's choose 7 devices. That's 14 channels. Perfect. So now here in my inventory, I have 12 microphones and 14 in-ears. That is, I would say, a fairly reasonable amount of wireless that you would have on a show. It's a little bit more than I have touring. This is less than you would have on a festival. We can do some different scenarios going forward. Quick overview of this. I'm not going to name these right now, but you could channel name all of these. You could also change your device ID. I usually like to order those. Your band is going to be designated by what is actually the band of your unit. And then obviously it defaults all these to 470.125. That's the lowest frequency we can tune to. And then all these other things, RF zones, inclusion groups, IP address, I'll touch on that in a little bit. So once you have everything into your wireless Workbench, or into your inventory that is, the next step is frequency coordination. So a couple ways to do this. Over here on the left is your scanning area. Let me zoom in on this. So if you had a device on here, if you had a receiver on your network, you could scan from that source. Now, one of the problems is you can usually only scan, well, not usually, you can only scan the bandwidth of that unit. So say you're using something like a UR4D in the H4, but then you're also using PSM 1000, say in the L8. You can't scan up into the L8 band with the H4 band. So usually scan source, you'll use something like a scanner, like an 8600, or something like an Axient that can scan the full spectrum. Since we don't have any units, what we'll do is we're going to use imported scan data. So I'm going to do this based off a recent show that I had. And so when you hit this import right here, you're going to have a couple ways to bring this in. You can either go from a scan library, from hardware, or from a file. So I have a CSV file that I scanned this myself. This was the Germania Amphitheater in right outside of Austin, Texas, at the Circuit for America's racetrack. So I'm going to open that up, and now that brings in this scan. So a couple things to see here off the bat. I got a bunch of blue here. That means that these are all exclusions. I got a threshold over here. I set that exclusion threshold to -85. That's the default. If I lower this, we're going to start to see a lot more blue pop up. Because as I lower that threshold, it's excluding more and more. And once I get low enough, I basically excluded everything. So we'll go back to -85. But I will usually drop that exclusion threshold as low as I can to get the most clean coordination I can. So I have my inventory. I have all of these frequencies. I have my frequency coordination. I've loaded it in a scan. So a couple more things I want to do with the scan. So I'm looking at this, and there's a few things that stand out to me. These three right here, this guy right here, and these two right here. These all look to me, and I can probably confirm, are TV stations. They down here are all your different channels. So the fact that these fit perfectly in channels 21, 22, and 23, that this fits pretty perfectly in 14, and that these fit pretty perfectly in 33 and 34, those are probably TV channels. Now I see all these other little fine spikes here. Now, I was at the F1 race, so these are most likely other transmitters that were on at the time that I did my scan. Obviously, you want to do that with as many transmitters off, but since these are unrelated to my show, just other things that were in the vicinity, those are things to be considered. Now, over here, let me zoom in on this, are other things. So I got my scan data. I have TV channels to avoid. Right now, there says no TV channels. If I come to this little gear icon right here, this will bring up a search result for TV stations in that area. Now, actually, I can't remember what the zip code was of that. So let's look up. Let me pull up my internet real quick. All right, 920. Oh, that's the address. 78617. So I'm going to add this postal code, 78617, and we're going to search for TV stations. So I'm not worried about anything here in the VHF because I'm not coordinating down in VHF, but I am concerned about channels in the UHF. So it is showing that there is an active channel 21, 22, and 23. It's showing that there's this guy, but that's not enough to include it. And then 33 and 34. So if I save those, perfect. So we can zoom out. It has now added these red. Those are TV exclusions to apply. And like I said before, that seems to line up. That looked like a TV station. Those are actual TV stations. Why I like to use these TV stations, channels to avoid, and not just go off my scan data, is in case for some reason they're not currently broadcasting at the time that I do my scan. They might turn on later, and I don't want to ruin my wireless by a TV station turning on, so I always include those. I'll get back down here to inclusion groups in a little bit. Right now, we can come back to adding frequencies. So I now have my exclusion. I'll look like I got a lot of decently clean bandwidth here, so I'm going to drop this down. Let's come down to minus 95 and see if I can get more of what I need. So there's a couple ways. This is my kind of workplace for my coordination. So when I add frequencies over here on the right and add frequencies, there's two ways to do it. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to select frequencies from inventory. So that's going to pull in all the frequencies here from my inventory tab that I have already. And typically that's what you see on your network. So it brought in the 14 PSM 1000s. It brought in the 12 Axients. And but currently nothing is analyzed, nothing is coordinated. Right now these are all showing the same frequency. If I hit analyze, it's going to say things are incompatible because 470 is currently blocked out in my coordination. I am below the threshold of what it says is acceptable for 470 125. If I just, as a thing, if I just turn off this scan and analyze, it's probably still going to be incompatible because of all those. They're all the same. Let's turn this back on. All right, so one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit calculate, and it's going to apply all these frequencies where it can fit. Now, some of this looks a lot more open. Some of this, it got me some up here in areas that I'm like, you say it's good, but that still has a lot of kind of traffic around it. I'm not sure how I feel about that. There comes a couple other ways we can do this. So let's come back to our spectra, or this area over here. Incompatibility. There are 3 different compatibility profiles. If I select these PSM 1000s, here are the 3 profiles. We're currently in standard. In standard, it wants to see 350 kilohertz in between channels, and then 250 kilohertz on the other side for intermods given off by others. I can come into more frequencies, and now that is going to be 325 kilohertz versus the 350, so it's going to be a little bit less channel spacing. Or if I come into robust, it's 375 kilohertz, so it's a little bit more channel spacing. I will always default to trying at least to do this in robust. Give me the most space in between as I can. I could also come in here and change this, I believe. Say I want to do 500. I can build my own, but that's usually not necessary. Let's go in and just keep it in the standard or what they have built. So now that I have both of these in robust, I'm going to calculate again. And now I have things that are a little bit further spaced out. Great. But I'm still seeing things that I don't particularly like. I don't know if I want to be up here when there's all this space over here that is cleaner. So let's do this. Let's come down here and let's increase our exclusion threshold, or decrease rather. Let's come down to minus 100. So now if I analyze, let's see if anything goes away and says it's not compatible. Yeah, so a lot of these Axient that are up here are no longer compatible. A lot of these are no longer compatible. So I can calculate again. But let's say I don't want to recalculate some of these because I liked where these ones were. I can lock any of these, and these won't change. So if I lock all these, only the ones that are unlocked are going to change. So if I calculate again, boom, now I'm compatible with all of those, and I got things a lot further down. I still have a couple in here that I don't particularly care for. So the next part of this is inclusion groups. Cool. I know that was a lot. Does anybody have any questions about any of that basic stuff before I continue into inclusion groups and some RF zones and some other things? I'm hoping most of that was fairly straightforward, but hopefully that was valuable as well. Let me scroll back and look at some of these other questions. I saw questions coming through as we were going. Dun, dun, dun. Somebody asked about just an RF power on wireless Workbench, or can you only do that from the transmitter? You can some of them you can, some of them you can't. That's not something we'll really get into today. Question about what band to use. No, so your equipment is going to be locked to a particular band. So when you buy wireless units, they're going to come at a certain band. And a lot of times you can change your, like if I have an Axient, if I buy Axient G57 packs, I can change the receiver to be G57, but you can't change the other way around. But no, that's usually set by the manufacturer, and it's usually based on your location. Good question. How many can you have by TV channel? So maybe I should go into that for a second, and then we can keep on going. So up here in your preferences, you have these coordination preferences. And for TV channels, let me zoom in on this. You can set a threshold for the minimum spacing leading from the edge of a TV channel. So right now, it won't let me coordinate anything within 100 kilohertz of a TV channel. I can change that to whatever I want. Say I want to be 350 kilohertz away from a TV channel. I can do that. Except, yeah, that's pretty much that. While we're here in the coordination order, this is kind of just a default for the order Shure uses for what it coordinates for. That's not something I usually ever touch. But so let's do this. Let's say 350. Let's go extreme. Let's do like 2000. So like and apply that there. And then let's save that. So if I analyze now, this one is no longer compatible. That's 531 650. That's because it's too close to that TV channel we set. It's within that threshold. So you see now this extra red here next to this TV channel. That has added that exclusion there. I'm going to come back to my preferences. I'm just going to lower that back because usually that's not something that I need to deal with. I'm going to come back down to the 100. I'll hit apply. What if your venue is next to a police station? Hopefully, if it's next to a police station, you'll be able to scan and see what all they're using. But that is one where occasionally, things will pop on, so scans throughout the day would be required. Let me zoom out back here, get this back out to this. So you can zoom in, zoom out. If you go too far, you can always come back in here and set your plot view again. So I'm going to set this back to 470 and set the ending to 607. Cool. Now we're back to that. So one common thing that people use either to organize where they want their scans to be or for other reasons that I can explain in the future are these things called inclusion groups. So I don't have any built currently. So if I come here to this gear icon, I can build inclusion groups. There's also these user groups that are built for certain countries. They have kind of certain exclusions. If you're in any of these countries, you may use that, or we're going to disregard that for now. So I want to account for inclusion groups when calculating frequencies. And I'm going to manage this. I'm going to add a list. So let's say this will be headliner bands. If you know, we can make these for different bands. And then I'm going to add 2 groups. I'm going to add one for PSM 1000, and I'm going to add one for Axient. So I'm going to add this. You can either select this. I'm sorry, let me zoom in on this. You can either select this based off of particular TV channels or by a frequency range or by a single frequency. So let's do by TV channels. Let's do, so TV channels 17 and 18 look to be open. So let's go 17, and then 18 goes to about 500. Yeah, let's go up to 500 megahertz. So now what this will do is this is only going to coordinate the PSM 1000s in that little band. And then for Axient, let's do the same thing. Let's come up here and let's go 532 to 545. Cool. So if I save that, those are now, you can kind of see now this is grayed out. It is showing my inclusion groups. So if I come here to the PSM 1000 and I right click on these, I can move these to an inclusion group. So I'm going to move that to the PSM 1000. And I'm going to move this to the Axient. In order for this to work, I'm going to need to unlock all of these. And now if I analyze, most of these are incompatible because they're outside those inclusion groups that I set. But if I calculate, it's now calculating. Okay, so now it has determined that I cannot get enough of these frequencies within that inclusion group. So one thing I can do, like I said before, let's come here. Let's change this to compatibility. Let's go to more frequencies and then calculate again and see if we can get those in. Now I got them in there. Awesome. So those are useful in a scenario where, like, say you want to keep things together. I want to keep my transmitters away from my receivers. I want to keep one band away from another band, artist that is. Or like you said, even though it might find clean things up in here, I just want to avoid all of that altogether. You can do that. Another thing you can do is say it might be finding useful things in here. I can come to my TV channels to avoid, and I can just add those TV channels. So I can say I just don't want anything to do with channel 31 or 32. We can save that, and now that's all going to be read out. So that's kind of your basic coordination. If all of these units were on the network, you could then assign and deploy, and those would deploy to whatever units you had. Another option you can do is come grab your, or let's see, is do a report. And now you can export this report and have all of your frequencies in there that you are using. Cool. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of show you what mine looks like with non-Shure gear But does anybody have other questions before I go forward? So can you manually move the channels on the spectrum? I see what you're asking. Are you saying can I take this and move it? I can take this and move it. Let's do this. Let's analyze everything. I got some that are now incompatible. So let's calculate. Let's do this. For the sake of this, let's move let's remove our inclusion groups. And let me calculate again. Oh. Let me stop this calculation and remove this guy from the inclusion group. And calculate. All right, so I have all these, but let's say I don't like where this one is. I can take this guy and move it wherever I want. Say I move it there. Now I need to analyze. And now that has created some others that are incompatible. So I don't often recommend doing that. I recommend just using whatever it calculates for you. Let's see some other questions. How do you set show link if you have during live Shure products only compatible with show link obvious? Show link is something I can do at another time because without any physical hardware, there's not really much I can show you with show link. Question: do I scan from a receiver or an external analyzer? So this scan that I have came from an RF Explorer that I used. I like to do that so I can have my scan and coordination done before my gear gets in. If you have like a 8600 analyzer, you can definitely scan from that. Back to the ShoreLink question though, you do need to have an analyzer in order to run certain things with ShoreLink. So Braden, the difference between analyze and calculate. So right now, all of these, if I analyze, that's just going to look at the ones I already have and tell me whether they're compatible in my current setup. If I calculate, it's going to give me all new frequencies. So if I don't want these to change, I can lock them out and just calculate new ones. But then, or I can just analyze and see, yep, everything's good. All right, so in this scenario, say this is all the gear that we have, and that's great. But then say your opening band comes in and says, hey, can you coordinate for me as well? I will be posting this video on my YouTube later. And then Hunter, I have not tried that. I've had a lot of people ask for me to do that. So let's say the opening band comes in and says, hey, we also have 8 channels of PSM 1000s. Can you add ours to your calculation? So I can say, sure. So I can come over here to add frequencies. So these ones are not going to be in my inventory because they're for different bands. Well, let's go. We can come to manufacturer, Shure, model. Let's come down to PSM 1000 and the G10 bands, and let's add 8 more. So now I have 8 more frequencies to add. Now, to your question earlier, Braden, if I hit calculate right now, it's going to recalculate all the ones I already did, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to come in here and lock all of these out so that nothing here will change. And I know you can highlight them all and do that, but we'll just come here, lock all these out. Now, if I calculate, it's going to calculate these 8 new ones, but won't touch any of these. So now herein lies our problem, is that we have now tried to put 22 channels within the G10 bands, and that becomes difficult. So like I said before, there's a couple ways I can do this. I can change this compatibility profile to be more frequencies. So that'll change the spacing, and I can calculate and see if it gives me any more. And there we go. Now I got everything I need just by doing that. The other thing you can do is I could increase this exclusion threshold, but usually I don't like to do that if I don't have to. All right, looking at questions. Cool. So let's back up. I'm going to start a new show fresh, and we're going to kind of do a different scenario that we can look at. So let's do a new show. I'm not going to save. Boom. So brand new, nothing else going on. Let's say we're doing this for a festival where we have a lot more frequencies. So let's come to our inventory. We're going to add devices. I'm going to do a scenario that I actually did before. I had a band. They came in with Shure. They had 84Q, and they G57 plus, and they had 28 channels. So let's do 7 units there. They also had 28 channels of the Axient PSM, which 80, where is that? I'm blanking on that model number. Somebody's got that for me in the chat. Well, for the sake of this, we'll add another 28 channels of this because it's the same thing. Another 28 channels. So we got a total of 56 channels of Axient. I also had Wizicom, so we'll add that. That was the house gear. We'll do Wizicom. I had the 952s in the US in the wide bands, and I had 12 channels of that. So I had 6 units. And then we also had some PSM 1000s for another band. We had 8 of those in the G10 bands. And then I had some of my own Axient. I had another 4 channels of Axient. So now in my frequency coordination, if I add frequencies from inventory, I got a lot more frequencies now to coordinate. So let's import that scan data back in. And then now, first thing, let's just go ahead and calculate and see if we can get it. So I actually got pretty far. I was able to get a good bit of this. I was able to get all the PSM 1000s. It's still trying for those last few. But let's say we have a different scan, or let's drop this exclusion threshold way down. Oh, it's still Skype. So back to the 100 we were at earlier. If I calculate now, I am a decent bit off of that. The reason why it's giving me the Wizicom pretty easily is because that's putting it up in the duplex gap. Just a reminder that some of this duplex gap you do need a Part 74 license for. Have I ever used the PSM 1000 and P10R to do RF spectrum scans? Yes, it's accurate. The problem is you can only scan that network. So if I had G10, I could only scan the G10 band. I couldn't scan the whole frequency spectrum with the PSM 1000. So here we have, I am still missing 15 of those guys. Looks like I got everything else. So if I come here to this, I come to compatibility. Let's make this. Oh, it's still trying to calculate more. Let's make this more frequencies. And if I calculate, still trying. Got me a little bit more. It's working on it. Boom. So now we got all 60. But there's another way to do this. So say this is multiple different bands who aren't playing at the same time, and you're going to tell everybody to turn off. And I want as clean as I can be, and I want everything to be in robust. I can move things to different RF zones, and that's going to be up here. I'm going to come to Tools, Manage RF Zones, and I can create different zones. So let's say I call this Headliner, Direct Support, and Opening Band. I can now coordinate the best frequencies for each of those, knowing that they won't be on at the same time. So say these guys are all the Headliner. I'm going to move this to RF Zone Headliner. Say these ones are all the Opening Band. I'm going to move these to Opening Bands. And then I'm going to move all of these to Direct Support. And I'm going to move all these to Direct Support. So now it can calculate these a little bit differently because it's not going to worry about the intermodulation between them. I can also come here to RF zones, and if I configure it, I can tell it to not worry about the channel spacing either. So it's not going to worry about how close it is to another channel because they're all going to be turned off. So now I can probably come here and I can probably put this back to robust. And I bet you I can get what I need. So let's now calculate all these. So yeah, now I have these robust. These are all in standard. And these are all in standard. Because now it's coordinated for these 45, not worrying about how close they are to any of these ones, with the assumption that you'll be turned off when they are not being played. You can also use that if you're, say, at a festival, or say, hey, we're coordinating across the two stages. They're close enough that we might want to worry about channel spacing, but not close enough that we're worried about intermods. You can worry about that. Or say you're in a convention hall with breakout rooms where you got a bunch of walls in between, but you want to have one master coordination. That's another thing you can do. So let me come here now. I'm going to load my file. This is the one that I actually coordinated for that amphitheater. So it's got the scan here from the amphitheater. And this is all the wireless that I have in my rig. I got 12 channels of WYSICOM, and I have 12 channels of Axient, or 6 channels of Axient. So I got a pretty simple coordination. But here's another reason why I love inclusion groups. So if I come here and I'll look at the inclusion group, it says it's in here in ears 520. So on these WYSICOM packs, on the MTK 950s, whatever the pack is, they have different shortwave antennas on them based on what frequency you are. I hate changing out my antennas every day, so I put them into an inclusion group. And I'll show you what those look like over here in my spectrum. Inclusion groups. I have my Turnpike, that's the band I work for. So I have these inclusion groups. Let me zoom in here. I have an ears 520, that's the antenna. So that ranges from 470 to 574. So I coordinate with this inclusion group. I don't have to change off the 520. these ears 634 is 574 to 615. So if I need to use the other antennas, I'll try to keep everything in that inclusion group. And then I have these inclusion groups for Axient. They're just the inverse of those two. So say I'm using the 520, then I want to be in the Axient high so that I keep my transmitters and my receivers separated. I also have an inclusion group for the duplex gap. And I actually need to fix this because this needs to be 650 or 663. So if you aren't familiar with what the duplex gap is, in the United States, there is a spectrum of bandwidth that's 653 to 663 that is called the duplex gap that is available to be used. You know, a lot of the stuff in the 600 megahertz range was sold off to broadband cell phone, but this is still usable. Now, I said 653 to 663, so why is my inclusion group 657 to 663? You need what is called a Part 74 license to use those first 4 or so megahertz in the duplex gap. I don't currently have my Part 74 license. Now, this is legal for anybody to use. However, you are capped at only 20 milliwatts. So I try to avoid the duplex gap if I can, but some days when I'm just like, it's crazy down in the main spectrum, I jump up there because most people or most wireless in the US can't get up there. I don't know of any. I don't think any Shure products can currently. So I have those inclusion groups. So like I said, these are added to the ears 520, and then if I wasn't lazy, so this is the Axient high. So Braden, if you're still here, this is the question you asked earlier. I can analyze, and those are all good. Of course, that's obvious because I did this as a calculation. Let's say tomorrow I was really lazy. Let me zoom back out. I was really lazy and I didn't want to change my frequencies, but I was in a new venue. I can come here and I can load a new scan. So let's say the next day I was in Corpus Christi. I'm going to open this scan data and I'm going to deselect my Germania Amphitheater one, and I have my Corpus Christi scan data. So now I have a lot of different scan data. And if I hit analyze, certain of these are no longer compatible. So if I lock out all the ones that still are compatible, and I calculate new ones, now I only need to change these 8 or so frequencies, which sometimes makes your day go a lot faster and is a lot easier. Now, as an example, say this is my coordination. I'm done for the day. I'm also mixing our opening band coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and add frequencies for them as well. And let's just say they have 8 PSM 1000 and ULXD, say they got another of the 8 of those. So I have these now. I'm going to go ahead and lock all of mine so that mine won't change. Because in theory, this scenario, they are coming to me after I've order coordinated, maybe even after I've sound checked to be like, hey, do you have a coordination for us? That one's locked. So now if I calculate, someone's not happy there. There we go. So now I have all of these calculated that I can then add into my, I can give to them. Now, if this is a band that was opening for me on a regular basis, like they were opening for every show and I was in charge of their coordination, probably what I would do would be to take these guys and add them to their own inclusion group so that they stay away from where I am. Of course, right now my inclusion groups are pretty broad, but that is kind of a basic way that I would do that in my current setup. I hope that kind of gives an idea of the ways to coordinate in Wireless Workbench. I am happy to answer any questions or do any scenarios. Oh, let me while you guys are asking questions, let me add one more thing. Somebody had asked the question about custom profiles. So up here in Tools, you have equipment profiles. Sorry, Gwen, you want to say hi? Here's my dog. All right. So you have these custom equipment profiles. And pretty much, anything Shure product is going to be in here. But also there's a lot of other manufacturers. You got AKG, Autentica, Audix, EV, Electrosonics, Sennheiser, Sony, Sound Devices, Wizicom. That's a custom one that I had made for a video for somebody. So if you had wireless that you didn't have a profile for, but you knew the specs for, you can build your own profile. So if I come to equipment and I do new, let's call this fake wireless, and it is model made up and the A band. Create. So down here at the bottom, I got this fake wireless right here, made up model. So I'm going to say that this is tunable from, let's say, 470 to 529, and it can, sorry, let me zoom in, and it will only coordinate in chunks of, say, 20 kilohertz, and there are 4 channels per device, and it is a in-ear monitor, and the channel spacing, for robust, it is 500 kilohertz, and then we hit save and apply all that. Cool. So now I can come back to my coordination and I can add in, oh, not from inventory. Let's do request additional. I'm going to come here to fake wireless, made up, and A band, and I want 8 more frequencies, and I can calculate those. And it's going to work on getting me frequencies in that. So if you ever have a custom profile that you need to make, that's how you do it. It's pretty good. Most of the big brands are now here in Wireless Workbench. When I was still on Wireless Workbench 6 and I had just moved to Wizicom, they did not have a profile yet, so I had to build my custom one. But then when Workbench 7 came out, they had one for Wizicom. So that's kind of an overall intro to Wireless Workbench and coordinating a Wireless Workbench. Obviously, that just scratches the surface of all the things you can do with it. It's incredibly powerful, especially when you get into monitoring and controlling your units. But for coordinating in Wireless Workbench, that is kind of a basic. Got about 10 more minutes here. And so if you guys have any questions, anything you want to see in Workbench, please let me know. Stanton and Helms, yes. I'm screen capturing and recording on Pro Tools right now. But then I'll also probably share just the Instagram Live as well. And I plan to put this on my YouTube channel. Let me see if I missed any questions. Dun dun. Hey, what's up, Weston? If you're still here, say hi. I don't think I missed any questions. So if you guys have anything, let me know. Otherwise, I am happy to wrap this up. I hope that was useful. I plan to be making more videos kind of about this, about scanning, other things like getting into sound base. I'm about to have surgery, so I'm going to be away from the road for a while. So things like this that I can make videos on, that's just computer related, I'll probably be making more of that content and a little bit less on my console, since I won't be at the console. For those of you who have stuck around for the whole thing, feel free to give me a follow. I post things, and I'm always happy to answer questions on Instagram. Full transparency though, I have a lot of people sending me like very like detailed and complex things, and I just don't have the capacity to answer all of those questions well without context and without time and preparation. So if you go to the link in my bio, I have an interest form for some online coaching I'll be doing. If that's something you'd be interested in, if you want kind of one-on-one coaching on your specific situation, whether that's with wireless or with console stuff or just anything lifetime related, that's something I'm going to be offering soon. So go ahead and sign up for that, and I'll be the first one to share that with you when I have it available. If a device doesn't have a connection for Ethernet like PSM300, can you add it or coordinate it? Yes. So let me delete some of this stuff, and let me show you exactly that. So in this scenario, these are back to just my units on my tour. So say you come in and you have 8 channels of PSM300. So I can add frequencies. So Shure PSM 300, and let's say we're in the G20 bands and we got 8 channels. We'll add that, and then you can just calculate that. Boom. So that's pretty straightforward. If they're yours, then you can do them in the inventory, and you can add them to your inventory, and you can just pull this in for inventory. So as an example, I use 12 channels of WYSICOM. I can't deploy to WYSICOM from Wireless Workbench. I can only deploy from them from their software, but that's PC based and it's pretty terrible, so I just do it all manually. So I can include that in my coordination, but then I have to go to my units and do those one at a time. Tech Sound Guy, yes, did I talk about my workflow using RF Explorer? I did not. I can do that quickly though, if that's something you guys would be interested in. I figured that would be a little more niche since not a lot of people are coordinating like that, but let me see where my scanner is. Okay. So for the few viewers still left, little bonus. So I use this little RF Explorer. This is the RF Explorer Pro, but if you search RF Explorer Pro, it's going to come up with a new one because this is an old, outdated one. There's a couple ways to do it, but I use this program right here called Touchstone Pro. So while that's booting up, I'm going to plug this into my computer. And right now it says connection failed because it doesn't see my Explorer. So let's close that out. Let's try it again. So you see I have this Explorer. Oh, not that. So this software is kind of a necessary evil. I'm not a fan of it. I hate that you have to be on the Wi-Fi to use it, because it needs to find online authorization. I know of some other options that people suggested to me. I just haven't tried them out yet. This is what I have. All right, so once I have it in there, it's taken over. So this is my frequency. Here on the right, I can change what my scan will be. Since I can go into the duplex gap, I go all the way up to 700. And then I'm going to change I'll show both ways. If you do an auto resolution and I start scanning, it will just start populating these guys here. I'm going to let that run for a second. And that is scanning the entire spectrum at the same time, which isn't necessarily always the best thing. I usually let that run for a little while. I'm going to hit stop. I'm going to move here to high resolution. And this is going to start doing some sweeps. So it's going to start scanning on the left, and it's going to sweep all the way up through the spectrum. Now, I am kind of in a suburb, and I'm inside, so it's not picking up very much. Those other scans I showed you guys earlier, I did this in the exact same way with the exact same scanner. That works well. So yeah, this is not even picking up much of anything. So the problem is when you coordinate here with this auto, and I start here, the noise floor is pretty high. Granted, if you get clean things with the high noise floor, it usually works out great. So if I stop that and I come up here to File, Export Max Hold Trace, let's just call this Instagram Test. That's going to export that as a CSV file. Now, when I come here into Wireless Workbench, I can come back and I can import scan data from File, and I can do that Instagram Test. And let me go ahead and turn off this other one, and boom, that is the scan data that we did. So now something you'll notice is it's a lot less defined than this one is. So this is the one that I did in the high resolution. You'll see kind of all those peaks. This one is very less defined. So when I'm down here at minus 98 threshold, almost nothing's available. So I don't like to do it that way if I have the time to do high resolution sweeps. Just gives you a little clearer picture of what you're working with. Joseph, you're very welcome. Let's see. How does Wireless Workbench read the frequencies? No, so currently it's just going off the scan data. So this is nothing about this is real time. This is all a momentary trace of what we're looking at. Now, if you're using something like an 8600 or a spectrum analyzer that can run real-time scans, it can use that information. And when you get into show link and things like that, that's what all that is. And I can do a video about that in the future when I have access to that gear again. But right now, it's just doing your coordination, looking at frequencies based off of this one moment in time. So that's why I said earlier, if you missed it, kind of about using your TV channels, making sure that you do multiple sweeps throughout the day, things like that, in case anything changes in your environment. What's up, Josh? What's up, Drew? If you guys are still here. What is my YouTube channel? I think it's Lacrone Audio. I don't have any. I have like one video on there. It's the first one that I posted on my TikTok as well. I haven't gotten going with that yet. My plan for the next couple months when I'm home recovering from surgery is to kind of get that YouTube channel going. This will probably be one of the first, the first things that I do. How do you deal with scan data from multiple sources? Is it a P10R scan plus wireless receiver scan plus RF Explorer scans? Okay, so right now you can see here that I have multiple scans selected, and I can toggle them on and off. So I have the scan we just did. I can toggle that on and off. I have this scan that I took in Corpus Christi for a show that I can toggle on and off. And I also have this scan. So none of these are the same because they're all in 3 different places. But say, you did 3 different scans in the same environment and you wanted to test to see like how accurate various things were, then yes, you could layer them all together. My wife asked if the dog is in here with me. Yep, Gwenny, you want to say hi to everybody? She had a bath today and she's very mad about it. Stan, I appreciate it. Yeah, having some ACL and meniscus surgery, so that's fun. I'll be off the road for a little while, but hopefully that means I can answer some questions. She doesn't have her collar on because she had a bath, and I never put her collar back on. All right, I know some people had just joined, but that I think is all I'm gonna do for today. If you guys have any other questions, send them to me as a message. I can do my best to answer any messages I get. Just be patient because I get a lot of messages and I try my best to answer when I can. And then I will do my best to get this posted somewhere where people can refer back to it and let me know if this is the kind of thing you want to see again in the future. I'm also diving into Soundbase. I can probably do something similar for Soundbase. Thanks, everybody. Peace.